Andy squirmed. You got literally every dime he had, she said, and in his brief he was supposed to hold a quarter of it back in reserve for future work. Andy sank deep in his chair. The next day the same thing happened with another partner. I absolutely destroyed the guy's budget. It didn't make sense. A lucky one-off was one thing. But this was a pattern. With my old-school, experiential knowledge, I was killing guys who knew every cutting-edge trick you could find in a book. The thing was, it was the cutting-edge techniques these guys were using that felt dated and old. I felt like I was Roger Federer and I had used a time machine to go back to the 1920s to play in a tennis tournament of distinguished gentlemen who wore white pantsuits and used wood rackets, and had part-time training regimens. There I was with my titanium alloy racket and dedicated personal trainer and computer-strategized serve and volley plays. The guys I was playing were just as smart, actually, more so, and we were basically playing the same game with the same rules. But I had skills they didn't. You're getting famous for your special style, Chris, Sheila said, after I announced my second day's results. I smiled like the Cheshire Cat. Winning was fun. Chris, why don't you tell everybody your approach? Sheila said. It seems like all you do to these Harvard Law School students is say no and stare at them, and they fall apart. Is it really that easy? I knew what she meant, while I wasn't actually saying no. The questions I kept asking sounded like it. They seemed to insinuate that the other side was being dishonest and unfair. And that was enough to make them falter and negotiate with themselves. Answering my calibrated questions demanded deep emotional strengths and tactical, psychological insights that the toolbox they'd been given did not contain. I shrugged. I'm just asking questions, I said. It's a passive-aggressive approach. I just ask the same 3 or 4 open-ended questions over and over and over and over. They get worn out answering and give me everything I want. Andy jumped in his seat as if he'd been stung by a bee. Damn, he said. That's what happened. I had no idea. By the time I'd finished my winter course at Harvard, I'd actually become friends with some of my fellow students. Even with Andy. If my time at Harvard showed me anything, it was that we at the FBI had a lot to teach the world about negotiating. In my short stay, I realized that without a deep understanding of human psychology, without the acceptance that we are all crazy, irrational, impulsive, emotionally driven animals, all the raw intelligence and mathematical logic in the world is little help in the fraught, shifting interplay of two people negotiating. Yes, perhaps we are the only animal that haggles. A monkey does not exchange a portion of his banana for another's nuts, but no matter how we dress up our negotiations and mathematical theories, we are always an animal, always acting and reacting first and foremost from our deeply held but mostly invisible and inchoate fears, needs, perceptions, and desires. That's not how these folks at Harvard learned it, though. Their theories and techniques all had to do with intellectual power, logic, authoritative acronyms like BATNA and ZOPA, rational notions of value, and a moral concept of what was fair and what was not. And built on top of this false edifice of rationality was, of course, process. They had a script to follow, a predetermined sequence of actions, offers, and counteroffers, designed in a specific order to bring about a particular outcome. It was as if they were dealing with a robot that if you did A, B, C, and D in a certain fixed order you would get X. But in the real world, negotiation is far too unpredictable and complex for that. You may have to do a then D and then maybe Q. If I could dominate the country's brightest students with just one of the many emotionally attuned negotiating techniques I had developed and used against terrorists and kidnappers, why not apply them to business? What was the difference between bank robbers who took hostages and CEOs who used hardball tactics to drive down the price of a Billion-dollar acquisition? After all, kidnappers are just businessmen trying to get the best price.